as I mentioned in the previous video, which if you haven't seen it, you can click right here, everything in this Terminator Genisys trailer seems to say that this is a new game between Skynet and the Resistance. John Connor knows that Skynet is going to go after his mum, so he sends a T-800 back to protect her as a child. Skynet knows that Kyle Reese becomes Connor's father, so sends a T-1000 back to intercept him as soon as he goes back in time. And this line from John Connor in the trailer,
"What you're doing right now, this is the end of the war,"
seems to mean that he is not just planning to go through the motions of what happened in the previous movies, and that's good too because we've already seen those. So I've got some ideas about what the new play is from John Connor here. But you remember what Sarah Connor said in the first movie when she was talking about all this stuff of Kyle Reese being sent back in time to become Connor's father and the time travel and the time loop that would be created out of doing that.
God, a person could go crazy thinking about this.
Well, we are going to think about exactly that, and we are going to talk about exactly that. So if you want to get a little crazy, if you want to get a little nuts, well then come on! Let's get nuts!
Then he had us. Lights out! Now you want to get nuts! Come on! Let's get nuts.
I seriously doubt that there's going to be anyone trying to stop Skynet from being created, because we already did that in Terminator 2 and it didn't work anyway. But when Sarah Connor says this,
we can stop Judgment Day from happening.
I think they're taking up a whole new strategy. A strategy that how it should have ended hit right on the head.
There's only one thing that can be done.
We have to terminate the creator of time travel. Dr. Emmett Brown, yes?
I reckon that's probably what they're going to do. Instead of trying to stop Skynet from being invented, they're going to try and stop time travel from being invented. There seems to be a lot more emphasis on the time travel element in this trailer. Not just because we actually see Kyle Reese being sent back and the actual time displacement equipment, something that we had only heard about in previous movies, but also because, as others have pointed out, there does seem to be 3 time periods in this trailer. The future, the 80s of the first movie, and the 90s of the second movie, with an Arnie even older than he was before, sporting a full head of grey hair, but Sarah Connor still being the same age? Like, what happened there? Well, if I'm right, and they're looking to prevent time travel from being invented, then they could run into an early version of the time displacement equipment and use it to jump forward a decade or so from the 80s to the 90s. But perhaps that equipment isn't advanced enough to send like a T-800 through, so Arnie just kind of has to wait around for a decade or so. Hence why when they arrive a decade later in the 90s, Arnie has aged even more and now he has a full head of grey hair, while they're all still the same age. I think that's what their new strategy is, preventing time travel to stop all of this stuff from ever happening. And that, I think, will lead them to the realization of a shocking truth. As my buddy Billy T800 has said over on his channel, and you should check it out, here's a link, he's one of the biggest Terminator nuts that you'll ever come across. In 2019, the rights to the Terminator franchise will go back to James Cameron no matter what. No matter how many movies Paramount makes, the rights will go back to James Cameron in 2019, no matter what. That's why Paramount is hoping that this will be the start of a new trilogy, because they want to make as many movies as they can to squeeze every bit of money out of the brand before they lose the rights. So the odds are pretty good that when they say that they have planned out 3 movies, they probably have. So all that's a big way of saying is, if they wanted to do something big with the story, they probably will now, because they've got nothing to lose anyway. So I think with all this apparent focus on the time travel shenanigans and the timeline resets and all that stuff, they will finally be able to address one of the biggest mind-blowing aspects of the whole mythos. Are you ready for this? Are you ready for this? You ready? Ready? It's gonna blow your mind. You ready? You ready? Okay, here we go. We all know Kyle Reese is sent back in time to eventually become John Connor's father. So John Connor was literally born out of a time loop. His best friend going back in time to become his father in the past. He's born out of that time loop. But in Terminator 2, we see that the T-800 that was sent back in the first movie to kill Sarah Connor, that eventually became the inspiration for the creation of Skynet. So Skynet was also born out of that same time loop. So John Connor and Skynet are kind of connected in this weird sort of way. And making this even weirder, consider this. If John Connor or his mother succeeds in erasing Skynet from the timeline, that will also erase John Connor from the timeline. Because with no Skynet in the future, there's no way to send Kyle Reese back to become his father. So in other words, if John Connor kills Skynet, he kills himself. But now here's where things really get tricky.
Stay with me.
If Skynet, on the other hand, succeeds in killing Sarah Connor, in effect erasing John from the timeline, would that then erase the need for Skynet to send the T-800 into the past in the first place? Well, if the answer to that question is yes, then Skynet won't send the T-800 back because it doesn't need to, because John isn't there, because he doesn't exist, so there'll never be a T-800 in the past that can cause the creation of Skynet. So in other words, if Skynet kills John Connor, it kills itself.
You understand? Yeah. No.
But if the answer to that question is no, and Skynet's loop of sending the T-800 back to erase John, that's complete and self-contained within itself, then Skynet can erase John Connor and still exist in the future. But the shocking truth of all of this is there is no scenario in which John Connor can erase Skynet without erasing himself. Skynet may or may not survive erasing John, but John cannot survive erasing Skynet. There's no scenario in which he survives that. So if they do make this new movie into a trilogy, I reckon that's probably going to be the shocking truth that John Connor is going to have to face in the end. The only way that he can kill Skynet permanently is to kill himself. Ultimately, John Connor will have to make the ultimate sacrifice to defeat Skynet and reset the timeline, erasing himself from existence. Hey, get out of here, Looper! This is a totally different movie, it's got nothing to do with you. Who knows, maybe the reason that we have Doctor Who in the movie is so that he can be like the exposition wizard, explaining all of this super complicated time travel stuff to the audience. Or maybe not, I don't know. I mean, this is just speculation. All we could do is guess and see what will happen. Question: if you were to erase either Terminator 3 or Terminator Salvation from the franchise's timeline, which one would you take out? Which do you think did the most damage? Personally, I would erase Terminator 3 because the point of the first two movies was the future is not set, there's no fate but what we make for ourselves. But then in Terminator 3, Arnie just says, oh, he didn't stop Judgment Day in the last movie because it's inevitable. Well, that has just completely destroyed the entire premise of the franchise. If Judgment Day is inevitable and all of this is preordained and nothing we do is going to change the future, so what's the point of doing any of this? Who cares? And why is Skynet even bothering to send Terminators back to try and alter the future if it knows that it's impossible to alter the future? So yeah, I would definitely erase Terminator 2. But which would you choose out of those two? Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you in the comments.